Ladies and gentlemen, it's 1971 and the candidates' final match between Bobby Fischer and Tigran Petrosian. So just for some context with regards to the 1971 candidates, in the quarterfinals, Bobby mopped the floor with Mark Taimanov. In the semis, Bobby also mopped the floor with Bent Larsen. You can see 6-0, 6-0, and we're now at the finals. Bobby against Tigran Petrosian, also former world champ from 63 to 69. Bobby opens with e4, c5 from Tigran, the Sicilian defense. We've got knight f3 and e6, which is known as the French variation. Bobby in the center with d4. We have takes and takes. A knight c6, which transposes into the Taimanov variation of the Sicilian defense. Alright, Bobby plays knight to b5. Tigran plays d6 to not allow the knight going to d6, because if you allow it and play something like a6 kicking out the knight, and that's bad because of the following. Play that and get check, takes and takes, and the bar is plus 1.7 and already an uncomfortable position as black very early in the game. d6 was played. Bobby develops his bishop to f4 and e5 from Tigran hitting the bishop. Bobby retreats the bishop to e3. We have knight c3 developing the king side, and now bishop to g5 hitting the knight. Tigran develops his bishop to e6. We have knight c3, a6, and Bobby first takes, keeping in mind that the queen is tied down to the d6 square. So if he takes with a queen, he gets forked. So if he took with a queen, then you're in a fork, and that's just bad for black. So in the game we got g takes f6, so getting a damaged kingside structure and doubled pawns for black. Bobby now retreats his knight. We've got d5, we've got takes, and takes also damaging the queenside structure for white. Bobby now recaptures with a pawn. Tigran develops his queen to d5, hitting the pawn and the pinned knight. Bobby plays queen to d2 to defend the knight. If you for some reason wanted to play queen f3, then don't, because of the following. If it's played, let's say you played queen to f3, the knight comes in and threatens a fork. You have to move your queen to defend the fork square, but then you get bishop to f5 and you're busted, because it's just bad for black and minus 9.6. So that's why d2 was the best move. We've got castles and 3 attackers on the pawn and only 2 defenders. So Bobby adds a defender with bishop to c4. We have rook h to g8, hitting the pawn. Here Bobby plays rook to d1, over defending the pawn. Here Tigran played bishop to f5, but the engine actually wanted him to take the pawn. Bobby offers an exchange of bishops with bishop to d3. We have takes and takes, and knight to d4, which is a nicely centralized square for the knight. We have castles and king to b8 from Tigran. Bobby also moves his king to safety out of the rook's view on the g file. Tigran now takes the pawn on a3. f4 from Bobby, hitting the e5 pawn. Tigran plays a rook to c8, attacking the knight. So Bobby offers a queen exchange with knight to e4. We have takes and takes. Rook to c2, now activating his rook. Bobby now proposes a rook trade to eliminate his opponent's strong piece. So that's a pro tip. We have takes and takes, and f5, sacking the pawn for some compensation, as we'll see just now. So we have a takes and rook to e8, attacking the pawn. Bobby defends. Tigran now attacks the rook. We get rook to e2, knight back to d4, hitting the rook again. We've got rook to e3, Tigran again hitting the rook, and Bobby then going after the h-pawn. We have takes, and Bobby hits the rook with knight to f3. We have takes and takes and takes, and h4, as there could be back rank issues to deal with for white, so creating luft for the king and also pushing the passed pawn. We've got knight to e3, rook takes on f7, Tigran then gives a check. We have king to h2, now he's going after the pawn with rook to a1. Bobby pushes, and ladies and gentlemen, we have blunder number 1 from Tigran. The engine wanted him to take on a2, because this just blunders a pawn. So we have takes and takes, now with 2 attackers on the g2 pawn. We have rook to e4, and the engine rather wanted king to h3, but that's fine. And we have takes with the rook x-raying the king. We have king to g3, and now rook to a5 attacking the pawn. Not the best move from the engine, as it wanted rook to c2, and at this point it's +5 for white according to the engine. Bobby played knight to e5, interfering with the rook's attack on the pawn. And ladies and gentlemen, Tigran resigned in this position. And if you're wondering how the game could have continued, according to Stockfish, the following could have happened. So just pushing the fast pawn. And now making way for the rook to come in. This is mate in 4, mate in 3, mate in 2, and mate. Fischer's victory earned him the right to challenge the reigning champion, Spassky, for the title. Guys, hope you enjoyed. Please subscribe to the channel. It really helps a lot.